You must have heard of samurais at least once in your life, whether in movies, cartoons, or video games. But how did the idea of their existence come into being? That is exactly what we'll cover in this video, the story of samurais from past to present. So make sure to watch the video till the end. Now, let's begin. Samurais were the warriors of ancient Japan. They eventually comprised the dominant military elite, which rose to become the most significant social caste during the Edo period from 1603 to 1867. This warrior class was known for having used various weapons, including guns, spears, and bows and arrows, but their primary weapon and emblem was the sword. They lived their lives by the Bushido ethic code, which was the way of the warrior. Bushido, which had solid Confucian roots, strongly emphasized ideas like respect for others, self-discipline, and ethical behavior. Many samurai were also drawn to Zen Buddhism's teachings and practices. The samurai traced their origins to the Heian period campaigns to subdue the native Emishi people in the Tohoku region. At the same time, wealthy landowners who had established armies for their security and had become independent of the central authority began hiring warriors more often. The central authority was eventually challenged and contested for control of the entire nation by the two most dominant of these landowner clans, the Minamoto and Taira. After winning the battle, Minamoto Yoritomo established a new military administration in 1192, headed by the shogun, or supreme military commander. Samurai then ruled Japan for the majority of the following 700 years. However, as Japan split into numerous independent nations in the 15th and 16th centuries, there was a greater demand for warriors, or ninjas skilled at unconventional battles. The well-known samurai movies by Kurosawa also depict this period. Subsequently, being a samurai was a desired profession during that time. Samurai training often started at a young age, with some kids learning about samurai ideas, martial arts, and weapons as early as 10. Also, a samurai's diet needed nutrition to support a way of life based on self-disciplined mental and physical training. They ate a lot of rice but had miso soup, vegetables, and fish, and could drink sake. During the Kamakura period, Zen Buddhism gained popularity among samurai. The religion's rigid yet straightforward rites complemented the Bushido or samurai code of the time. The Bushido code of the samurai was a set of implicit, unwritten norms that stressed discipline, honor, and morality. Despite later religious changes in Japan, Bushido continues to serve as a general code of conduct for the nation's citizens. Samurai warriors also had a distinctive appearance. They frequently wore plated armor called tusei gusoku, or kimono-style gowns. During conflicts, fighting helmets or kabuto were often used. These helmets protected the back of the neck and the head. As the samurai class's power increased, kabuto and tosei gusoku became more elaborately ornamented as artisans created samurai armor to represent a warrior status. Early samurai tended to choose spears as weapons, while samurai on horses favored bows and arrows. The katana, undoubtedly the most recognized sword of the samurai, is also renowned for its distinctive appearance. Traditionally, the katana was made from tamahagani, Japanese specialty steel. Tama and hagani denote steel, which is circular and costly. The single-edged, slender, slightly curved blades were around 70 centimeters or 27.5 inches in length. The lengthy grip of a katana was designed to hold two hands, while the samurai hands and fingers were often shielded with a circular or squared guard. Finally, the sword was suspended from an obi-style sash. The katana is a visual symbol of a Japanese warrior and has cultural significance to the samurai society. Like the rest of his equipment, the quality of a man's sword became more critical since it functioned as a representation of his honor. It is believed that samurai warrior status was even more astounding than the Bushido code in skilled weaponry. Samurai wars, conquests, and other oral histories were eventually written down and turned into epics. Some myths are still transmitted today through modern media and kabuki and no theater. One such myth is that Miyamoto Musashi, who killed his first opponent at 13 and took part in other battles without suffering any injuries. Sukahara Bokuden, one of the deadliest samurai, participated in 9 duels and 37 fights. Later, he passed away naturally, still unbeaten. Date Masamune, commonly known as the One-Eyed Dragon, is said to have amputated his eye as a youngster to halt the spread of smallpox. At 14 and 17, he would take charge of his clan and command the battlefield. Another myth is the idea that all samurai were men. Women may also become samurai, though the vast majority were men, like in the example of Tomoe Gozen, who was a female samurai. She was reputed to command armies and is said to have taken the heads of 7 foes during the Battle of Yokotagawara in 1181. A thing to note is that samurai continue to capture people's attention thanks to their legendary achievements, distinctive appearance, and manner of life. The popularity of 8th century warriors is evidenced by the fact that they are still crucial in the 21st century. Stories in contemporary samurai literature have brought about a change in how people viewed samurai. As was already mentioned, the renowned katana was more of a prestige symbol than a preferred weapon. It is also believed that samurai were always faithful. However, this notion didn't come into play until years after its emergence. Reading old Japanese legends and legendary warriors who lived in the 12th century can be deceiving. For example, these tales have several instances of the highest loyalty. The problem is that many of these stories were altered to represent idealized values of the day rather than those of the past by being removed from the original context and rewritten hundreds of years afterwards. It can be challenging to find the older, less decorated editions of these re-edited volumes because many current editions are widely available. Take the deaths of two well-known Japanese generals, Minamoto no Yoshinaka and Minamoto no Yoshitsune, as an illustration of how these tales have evolved through time and represent the idealized values of the specific era. Both warriors were referred to as having been killed by their adversaries in the oldest iterations of the Heike Monogatari, a chronicle of the conflict between the Minamoto and the Taira clans for control of Japan. That was written most recently before their deaths in the late 12th century, but in later adaptations, such Tomoe and Yoshitsune, a 15th century chronicle, both characters performed seppuku, or ritual suicide. This is an example of how history may be changed to reflect people's preferences, whether or not those preferences are accurate. So, we must be mindful that history can be easily twisted. However, harakiri, or seppuku, often known as ritual suicide, was a darker aspect of samurai culture. Seppuku, which a samurai may only perform, is a form of ritual suicide or honorable death involving dismemberment. In Japanese, the words hara, which refers to the stomach, and kiri, which denotes cutting, form the phrase stomach cutting. Even though seppuku and harakiri have the same meaning in Japanese, seppuku is nearly never used by Japanese speakers. Harakiri refers to the action of cutting the stomach, while seppuku represents the ritual and the traditional procedure of cutting the stomach. The seppuku tradition was first used by the upper and samurai classes, used the seppuku tradition to make amends for wrongdoings, reclaim lost honor, or avoid dishonorable capture in the 12th century. Seppuku was regarded as the most honorable method for a samurai to pass away when appropriately performed, and based on tales from witnesses to such ceremonial suicide. It was also likely the most excruciating. Therefore, the act of harakiri is only performed by samurai. While commoners can do so, it would not be worthwhile. So, now we suggest you not even consider doing it. The samurai believed it preferable to die bravely by one's own hands than to be defeated by the enemy. Later, when the nation was eventually brought back together in the late 1500s, the Edo period established a severe social caste structure that placed the samurai at the top, followed by farmers, artisans, and merchants in that order. The only people permitted to own and carry swords at the time were the samurai, who were also required to live in castle towns and were paid rice by their daimyo or feudal lords. Known as ronin, masterless samurai were a minor nuisance in the 1600s. For the roughly 250-year Edo period, there was a fair amount of peace. As a result, fighting prowess became less critical, and many samurai turned to careers as administrators, educators, or artists. The samurai class was eliminated a few years after Japan's feudal era ended in 1868. However, it is essential to note that the samurai depictions of the present day take the Tokugawa samurai and adapt them to the needs of a contemporary audience, ignoring the fact that for the majority of their existence, the samurai were not what we imagine them to be, and repackaging the constantly shifting warrior class into a stereotype that fits well with our idealized heroism and other exciting ideas. The appeal of the samurai character to the West is only one more illustration of our obsession with Orientalism, or the purported exoticism of East Asia. To set Japan apart from the rest of the world, the Japanese have revived the samurai in popular culture, a social class that hasn't existed in over a century and may have already lost most of its meaning. Another front for Japanese culture has been created by the reinvented samurai, whose significantly exaggerated, frequently mythical ideas are likely to be as mysterious to the average Japanese person as they are to any outsider. Consequently, many samurai-themed tourist attractions spread around Japan, including castles, old houses, museums, theme parks, and dress-up excursions. Travelers have numerous options to discover and participate in samurai culture and way of life. These are: Number 1. Castles. Over the years, castles evolved from modest defensive outposts constructed high upon mountains into enormous complexes at the center of cities, where they function as the status symbol. the seat of government, and the home of the local lord. The town surrounding the castle has come to the lord's samurai vassals. The higher their rank, the closer they live to the castle. There were currently more than 100 castles in Japan, including 12 historic castles whose main keep survived the post-feudal years intact in numerous contemporary reconstructions. Most castles have displays or museums dedicated to the samurai's artifacts and way of life. Number 2. Samurai districts and mansions. Samurai were compelled to live in particular areas of the castle cities during the Edo period to divide the social castes. Today, several of the samurai districts are preserved, offering tourists a look at the samurai's way of life and their ancient aura of winding roads, mud walls, entrance gates, and homes. Other times, individual samurai mansions have been saved and made accessible to the public. Number 3. Museums. A few dedicated museums just display artifacts from the samurai, while most history museums in Japan display at least a few swords or armors from the samurai. Some of these include the Sword Museum in Tokyo, which houses one of the largest public sword collections in the nation, the Tokugawa Art Museum in Nagoya, which showcases weapons, household items, artwork, and tea utensils, and the Maeda and Honda Museums in Kanazawa, which showcase artifacts from the two most significant samurai families in the area. Number 4. Theme parks. There are a few historical theme parks in Japan, which are reconstructed feudal cities. As a fascinating method to learn about samurai culture and history, the parks typically have a range of attractions, live performance, museums, stores, and restaurants. They are also frequently manned by townspeople dressed historically. Number 5. Samurai-related activities. Tourists can experience the samurai culture through various samurai-related activities and experiences. They include dress-up activities where participants can don ninjas or samurai garb, as well as martial arts classes that teach participants how to use samurai weapons and tactics. And that's all for samurais. Tell us what you think about these legends. Also, if you have been to a tourist destination created to pay homage to samurai, please share your experiences in the comment section below. We'll see you next time with another amazing video. Until then, stay mythical.